Indiana looks like the most boring state in America. Flat cornfields. Nothing to see. But what's hiding beneath the surface will make you question if physics even works here anymore. At number 16, we have a hill in southern Indiana where gravity stops working. Put your car in neutral, and it rolls uphill, not downhill. Uphill. Against every physics law you know. People tested this with levels and laser equipment, thinking it was fake. The road actually slopes down, but your eyes see it climbing. The visual trick is so powerful that water looks like it flows upward. Locals bring visitors here just to watch their faces go blank when the car creeps backward up the hill. Some people get out and physically push against what their brain insists is an incline. The effect happens because surrounding trees and terrain tilt your perception of level ground. Your brain uses the wrong reference point, and suddenly down looks like up. Reality bends right in front of you. Coming in at number 15 is something even stranger. Indiana has ghost forests. Entire tree lines from thousands of years ago still standing perfectly preserved underwater in swamp wetlands across the state. These trees drowned when water levels rose after the Ice Age, but the swamp water had zero oxygen. No bacteria could survive to rot the wood. The trees just stood there frozen in time. You can wade into certain wetlands and touch bark that grew when woolly mammoths walked Indiana. The wood is still solid, still has its texture, like the forest died yesterday instead of 10,000 years ago. Scientists use these ghost forests to study ancient climate patterns. The tree rings hold weather data from an era when glaciers still covered the northern half of the state and saber-toothed cats hunted here. But number 14 gets even weirder. Some Indiana farmers plow fields, sitting directly on top of abandoned coal mines. Miles of empty tunnels run beneath their crops, with nothing but limestone holding everything up. These mines were dug in the 1800s and early 1900s, then just left when the coal ran out. No one filled them in. No one sealed them. Farmers bought the land, not knowing there were caverns beneath their feet. Every time heavy equipment rolls over these fields, there's a chance the ground could collapse. Some farmers have lost entire tractors when sinkholes opened up and swallowed them into abandoned mine shafts, 40 feet deep. The state has maps showing where old mines are, but many weren't recorded. You could be standing on your lawn right now with a chamber the size of a warehouse directly beneath you and never know it. At number 13, we have a hidden fault line running under southwestern Indiana that most people have never heard of. The Wabash Valley Seismic Zone. It can produce earthquakes over magnitude 7. This fault line has been quiet for a while, but geological records show it produced massive quakes in the past. We're talking ground shaking strong enough to ring church bells in Boston 1,000 miles away. The New Madrid earthquakes of 1811 and 1812 made the Wabash River flow backward. Eyewitnesses said the ground rolled in waves like ocean water. Entire forests fell over at once. Lakes drained into new cracks in the earth. Scientists say the fault is still active, and another major quake is not a question of if, but when. Most Indiana buildings were never designed to handle that kind of shaking, because people forget the danger exists. But number 12 is where things get really strange. Indiana sand dunes can sing. The dunes along Lake Michigan produce humming sounds when wind moves the grains at just the right speed and angle. The sound happens because each grain of sand is almost perfectly round and the same size. When wind pushes millions of them together, they vibrate at the same frequency and create an eerie musical tone. People who hear it say it sounds like a low cello note, or a distant motor running. The dunes only sing under specific conditions. Dry sand, steady wind. The right temperature. Miss one factor, and the sound disappears. Scientists recorded the singing dunes and analyzed the frequency. The sound matches a specific musical note that changes slightly based on grain size. Nature accidentally built a massive wind instrument out of sand. Coming in at number 11 is something that sounds impossible. Parts of northern Indiana were buried under ice, a mile thick, not snow. Solid glacial ice stacked higher than the world's tallest skyscrapers. The glacier was so heavy, it crushed the ground beneath it. When the ice finally melted around 12,000 years ago, the land was pressed down hundreds of feet lower than it started. You can still see the proof today. Northern Indiana is covered in glacial till. Boulders the size of cars scattered randomly across fields. They were frozen inside the glacier and dropped when the ice melted. Some of these boulders came from Canada. The glacier picked them up and carried them hundreds of miles south before finally releasing them. They sit there now in Indiana, completely out of place geologically. At number 10, we have sinkholes that open overnight with zero warning. You go to bed with a normal backyard and wake up to a hole 40 feet deep that appeared while you slept. This happens because Indiana sits on top of limestone bedrock. Groundwater slowly dissolves the limestone over thousands of years, creating hollow caves. Eventually, the roof gets too thin and collapses all at once. In 2018, a woman in southern Indiana heard a boom at 3 in the morning. She looked outside, and a sinkhole 30 feet wide had swallowed half her driveway. The hole was so deep you couldn't see the bottom. Geologists say there's no way to predict where the next sinkhole will form. The erosion happens invisibly underground. By the time you notice surface cracks, it's already too late. The ground is about to give way. But number 9 is why Indiana feeds so much of America. The soil here is classified among the richest agricultural land on Earth. It's not just good dirt, it's geological gold for growing food. The glaciers that covered Indiana ground up rocks into perfect mineral powder. When the ice melted, it left behind soil packed with nutrients. Then thousands of years of prairie grass added organic matter on top. Farmers can grow corn in Indiana soil for decades without adding much fertilizer. The ground just keeps producing. 1 acre of Indiana farmland can yield almost twice as much crop as regular soil in other states. This is why Indiana is one of the top corn and soybean producers in the entire country, despite being a relatively small state. The dirt itself is engineered by geology to grow things better than almost anywhere else. At number 8, we have buried meteorite fragments, scattered across central Indiana, pieces of space rock that slammed into the ground thousands of years ago and got covered up by soil and time. Farmers find them when plowing fields, dark metallic chunks that don't match any local rock. Scientists tested them and confirmed they came from asteroids. Some fragments are over 4 billion years old, older than Earth's surface. The fragments suggest a meteorite exploded in the atmosphere over Indiana and rained down pieces across a huge area. Most are still buried. You could dig in your backyard and hit a piece of asteroid. Collectors pay thousands of dollars for verified meteorite pieces from Indiana. What looks like a weird rock in your garden might be worth more than your car if it turns out to be extraterrestrial metal. Coming in at number 7 is lightning. So intense it makes the Midwest look like a war zone. Indiana lightning storms are among the most violent in the entire country. More strikes per square mile than almost anywhere. The geography creates perfect conditions for electrical chaos. Warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico collides with cool Canadian air right over Indiana. The temperature difference builds massive thunderheads in minutes. Some Indiana storms produce over 100 lightning strikes per minute. The sky lights up so bright it looks like daytime at midnight. Thunder shakes houses hard enough to set off car alarms blocks away. Lightning strike maps show Indiana glowing like a hot spot. The state ranks in the top 10 nationally for lightning deaths and property damage. Storms here don't mess around. They come fast and hit hard. But number 6 is something out of a slow-motion horror movie. Indiana dunes migrate inland year after year, swallowing entire forests as they move. Trees get buried alive under advancing walls of sand. The dunes along Lake Michigan move about 4 feet per year, pushed by constant wind. That doesn't sound like much until you realize they've been doing this for thousands of years, covering everything in their path. You can hike through the dunes and find dead treetops poking out of the sand. The rest of the tree is buried 20 feet down. Some forests got swallowed so fast, the trees are still standing upright underground. Scientists call these ghost forests, under the dunes. In a few hundred years, the sand will move past and expose the preserved trees again. The dunes bury forests, then uncover them in an endless cycle of coverage. At number 5, we have rare blue clay deposits formed under extreme pressure deep underground. This clay is so unusual that geologists from other states come to Indiana just to study it. The blue color comes from minerals that only form when clay gets crushed under immense weight for millions of years. Indiana blue clay was squeezed beneath ancient mountain ranges that don't even exist anymore. Potters and sculptors prize Indiana blue clay because it fires into ceramics with unique colors and strength. The clay is so dense and pure you can make pottery thin as paper and it won't crack. Most of the blue clay deposits sit hundreds of feet underground. Mining companies have to drill deep to reach it. The clay down there has been untouched since dinosaurs walked the surface above. Coming in at number 4 is something that sounds completely wrong. Some Indiana forests grow on land that was underwater just 12,000 years ago. These trees are living on ancient lake bottoms. When the glaciers melted, they created enormous temporary lakes across Indiana. Some lakes were 50 miles wide and hundreds of feet deep. Then the water drained away and left flat, fertile ground behind. You can walk through these forests and find lake-bottom sediment under the topsoil, smooth clay and sand layers that only form underwater, shell fragments from freshwater clams mixed into the dirt beneath the trees. The forests are growing on soil that was a lake floor when woolly mammoths were still alive. Ground that had fish swimming over, it is now covered in oak and maple trees. The transformation happened in geological seconds. At number 3 we have Shade State Park, which looks peaceful now, but early settlers called it the Shades of Death. Deep dark canyons where sunlight barely reaches the bottom, even at noon. Legends say massacres happened in those canyons. Murders that kept settlers away for decades. The ravines were so steep and dark that people who went in sometimes never came out. Searching parties couldn't find the bodies. The sandstone cliffs create natural ambush points. The narrow passages echo every sound, making it impossible to tell where noises come from. Early pioneers genuinely feared the place and avoided it when traveling through the area. Modern hikers still report feeling watched in certain parts of the park. The canyons create weird acoustic effects and shadow patterns that mess with your sense of direction. What scared settlers still makes visitors uneasy today. But number 2 is geological art that took longer to create than human civilization has existed. Mu-Rengo Cave features the frozen Niagara, a massive stone waterfall that looks like flowing water turned to solid rock. This formation took hundreds of thousands of years to build in total darkness. Mineral-rich water dripped from the ceiling, one drop at a time. Each drop left behind microscopic layers of calcite that slowly grew into this sculpture. The frozen Niagara looks so much like real water that your brain insists it should be wet. The stone ripples and flows in perfect frozen waves. You can see where drops were about to splash before they turned to rock. The formation is still growing, but so slowly you'd need to wait 1,000 years to notice any change. Every drop adds another atom-thick layer to a masterpiece that nature started building before modern humans existed. But number 1 is where Indiana tried to change reality itself through legislation. In 1897, the Indiana General Assembly actually attempted to legally redefine the value of pi to 3.2 instead of 3.14159. A local amateur mathematician convinced a state representative that he had squared the circle and solved ancient geometry problems. The representative introduced a bill to make the new pi value official Indiana law. The bill passed the Indiana House of Representatives unanimously. Everyone voted yes to change mathematics by government decree. It only failed in the Senate after a real mathematician happened to be visiting and explained how insane this was. Indiana nearly became the only place on Earth where circles had different mathematical properties than the rest of the universe. They tried to alter the geometry of reality using a legislative vote that actually almost happened.